Humanity's last hope for survival stood on the brink of annihilation as a desperate plea cut through the silence of Earth's night. Massive Krenim ships appeared in the skies without warning, sending waves of panic through the population. No one on Earth had seen an alien vessel in over 400,000 years. Most didn't even believe other spacefaring civilizations still existed. Terry Harris, one of humanity's top government leaders, raced to the capital to meet the Krenim delegation that had landed and demanded an emergency summit. He found their leader Indus already seated in the meeting room, an expression of pure anguish on his face. "I'll get right to the point," Indus said solemnly. "The Krenim, along with every other free species in the galaxy, are on the verge of total destruction. A cruel empire is tearing across the stars, conquering and enslaving everything in its path." Terry's hands clenched into fists. How was this possible? Humanity thought the days of such tyranny were long behind them. Indus continued, "Your people are our last hope. Legends still speak of humanity's indomitable will and genius for war. The stories say that no matter how outmatched, humans always find a way to prevail against impossible odds." The alien's words sent a chill down Terry's spine. He knew almost nothing of humanity's ancient past out among the stars before they returned to Earth. Could there be truth to these legends? "What exactly are you asking of us?" Terry said, dreading the answer. Indus leaned forward, his eyes pleading. "We need humanity to honor its legacy as the galaxy's mightiest warriors. If your people fight alongside us, we may yet stand a chance against the enemy. But alone, the Krenim will fall, and Earth will be defenseless against the onslaught to come." The implications crashed over Terry like a tsunami. Humanity had mere months to prepare for a war that would determine the fate of not just their world, but the entire galaxy. Everything they had struggled to rebuild over the last 500,000 years teetered on a knife's edge. Most of the human government recoiled from the idea of entering such a conflict. Terry knew he would have to convince them that fighting was the only path to survival. Indus had made it clear, this was humanity's battle too. If Earth didn't join the war now, on their terms they would face the enemy alone when the Krenim were gone. And against the monsters Indus described, alone meant extinction. Terry stepped onto the Krenim flagship, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and awe. Indus led him through the sleek corridors, the advanced technology a stark reminder of how far Earth had fallen behind. Wall panels glowed with holographic displays, while crew members in form-fitting uniforms moved with purpose. "Impressive, isn't it?" Indus said, noticing Terry's wide-eyed stare. "But even this is nothing compared to the enemy we face." They entered a cavernous hangar bay, where dozens of Krenim warships hung in racks like deadly daggers. Terry ran his hand along the nearest hull, feeling the battle scars etched into its surface. "I can see you've been through hell," Terry said quietly. Indus nodded, his face grim. In the command center, Terry huddled with Krenim tacticians around a massive hollow table. Star maps flared to life, red markers indicating fallen worlds. The enemy's conquests spanned vast swathes of the galaxy. "Their fleets are massive, their weapons advanced," a Krenim officer explained. "They strike swiftly, overwhelming defenses before their victims can react." Terry studied the data, his brow furrowed in concentration. He pointed to a cluster of enemy movements. "There, those maneuvers. They resemble an ancient Earth tactic called Blitzkrieg, lightning war. Have you—" Alarms blared, cutting him off. An operator shouted, "Admiral, enemy scout ships detected entering the system." The command center erupted into controlled chaos. Krenim crew members rushed to stations, hands flying over consoles. "Jam their comms," Indus barked. "Launch intercept." "No good, sir," the operator replied, his voice tight. "They're cloaking, pulling out." Terry pursed his lips. They were monitoring us, gathering intel on Earth. Indus met his gaze, a heavy understanding passing between them. "They know," Indus said softly. "They know we're here, that Earth is our last refuge." "Which means they'll attack sooner than planned," Terry finished. "We're out of time." Back on Earth, Terry faced a room of somber government officials. Some fidgeted nervously, Others glared in disbelief. "You're saying we should trust these aliens?" one official scoffed. "Commit our people to a war we barely understand?" Terry slammed his hand on the table, silencing the murmurs. "The Krenim risked everything to warn us," he said, his voice like steel. "I've seen their losses, their desperation. This enemy is real and they're coming for us. We can't hide anymore." He leaned forward, holding each official's gaze. "We have a choice. Fight now with the Krenim at our side, or wait for the enemy to crush them and come for us alone. I, for one, refuse to let our people face extinction without a fight." Silence hung heavy in the room. Then slowly, one by one, the officials nodded. "What do you need from us?" the Prime Minister asked. Terry took a deep breath. "Everything. Reactivate every shipyard, every weapons factory on Earth. I want an arsenal the likes of which we haven't seen in millennia. And I want our best minds working with Krenim engineers to upgrade our tech for war." In the weeks that followed, Terry threw himself into the preparations with relentless focus. Shipyards roared to life, churning out gleaming new vessels jam-packed with advanced weaponry. He trained his crew tirelessly, pushing them to master the alien systems. But in the quiet moments, Terry couldn't shake the questions that clawed at his mind. Why had humanity retreated from the stars all those centuries ago? What dark chapters of their history had they forgotten? And the question that chilled him to his very core, did Earth, even with its newfound Krenim allies, really stand a chance against an empire that had brought the galaxy to its knees? As Terry stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth's new fleet assemble to set out for the front lines, he realized those answers would come only in the crucible of the war to come. A war that would decide the fate not just of Earth, but of every free species left in the galaxy. Terry Harris stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching as Earth's fleet pushed out into the solar system. Massive battleships and carriers stretched out before him, their hulls gleaming in the pale light of distant stars. Krenim vessels interspersed with human ships, their alien designs a stark reminder of the dire circumstances that had brought them together. "Status report," Terry barked, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. A young officer responded, "All ships reporting ready, sir. Krenim upgrades are integrated and operational." Terry nodded, a grim smile on his face. The Krenim had worked tirelessly, pushing Earth's technology to its limits. But as he studied the readouts, Terry knew it wouldn't be enough. Their ships were stronger, faster, more deadly than ever before, and still hopelessly outmatched. "Sir!" a Krenim tactician called out, her voice tight with tension. "Enemy forces detected amassing in the Kuiper Belt." Terry's teeth clenched. "Battle stations. Move the fleet into defensive formation Alpha." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as orders were relayed. Outside, ships maneuvered with precision, forming up into tight squadrons. Then, in a blinding flash of light, the enemy arrived. Terry's breath caught in his throat. The tactical display filled with hostiles, hundreds, thousands of ships, grotesque biomechanical monstrosities that stretched as far as the eye could see. "My God," someone whispered. Before Terry could speak, space itself seemed to ignite. Beams of searing energy lanced out from the enemy armada, tearing through the defensive screens of Earth's front line. The Defiance rocked violently as a direct hit slammed into its hull. Sparks showered from consoles as the deck plates buckled beneath Terry's feet. "Damage report," he shouted over the din of alarms. "Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7, shields at 30%. Terry steadied himself against a console. "Evasive maneuvers. All ships, return fire." Earth's fleet responded with fury. Missiles streaked across the void, their warheads enhanced by Krenim technology. Lances of energy, a gift from their alien allies, speared out from human vessels. The battle raged, a cosmic light show of destruction. Enemy ships erupted into expanding balls of plasma, but for every foe they felled, 2 more seemed to take its place. Hour after agonizing hour, Terry watched his fleet slowly crumble. The enemy's technological edge was simply too great, their numbers too vast. "Sir," his XO said quietly, "we can't hold them." Terry's mind raced, searching for options. There were none. Helm, he said, his voice hoarse. Set collision course for that enemy dreadnought. Prepare to evacuate the bridge crew. Protests erupted around him, but Terry silenced them with a glare. Do it, now. The Defiant surged forward, engines straining. Terry felt the deck plates vibrate beneath his feet as the mighty ship accelerated towards its doom. Impact alarms blared. Terry closed his eyes. The collision was beyond description. Metal screamed as it tore. Fires erupted throughout the ship. Terry was thrown violently to the deck, agony lancing through his body. Through a haze of pain, he felt hands grabbing him, dragging him towards an escape pod. The last thing he saw before the pod's hatch sealed was his beloved Defiance, along with hundreds of brave crew members, erupting into a massive fireball. From the bridge of another Earth vessel, Terry watched the battle's final moments in horror. The sacrifice of the Defiance had inflicted damage, but it was a mosquito bite to a giant. Enemy capital ships swarmed the Krenim battle group, tearing it apart with surgical precision. A strangled cry escaped Terry's lips as Indus's flagship disintegrated under concentrated fire. His friend, his ally, was gone in an instant. "Sir," a comms officer said, her voice trembling, "what are your orders?" Terry closed his eyes, fighting back tears of rage and despair. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "Full retreat. Fall back to Earth's defensive perimeter." As the battered remnants of his fleet limped back towards the inner system, Terry's mind raced. How had it come to this? In the span of days, humanity had been brought to the brink of extinction. He watched helplessly as the enemy methodically crushed the pitiful defenses they'd left behind. Mars fell. Then Jupiter's moons. Saturn's orbital platforms lasted less than an hour. Now, as the last survivors regrouped near Pluto, Terry felt the weight of failure crushing down upon him. He stared out at the vast emptiness of space towards the distant light of Earth. "What have I done?" he whispered to himself. "Was this all for nothing?" Terry Harris stood on the bridge of his battered flagship, the flickering displays casting an eerie glow on his haggard face. The remnants of Earth and Krenim forces huddled behind Pluto, a pitiful defense against the unstoppable tide of enemy ships advancing through the solar system. "Status report," Terry barked, his voice hoarse from hours of shouting orders. A junior officer looked up from her console, eyes sunken with exhaustion. "Sir, enemy forces have seized control of Jupiter and Saturn. Our outer planet garrisons are gone." Terry's fists clenched at his sides. So many lives lost, and for what? He forced the guilt down, focusing on the task at hand. "What's the status of the Krenim research project?" "Still ongoing, sir," the officer replied. "Dr. Venn reports they're making progress, but—" A proximity alarm blared, cutting her off. Terry's head snapped towards the main view screen. "Report! Scout ship detecting massive subspace distortions in the Kuiper Belt," another crewman shouted. "Sir, it's another enemy fleet. Hundreds, maybe thousands of ships." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. They were already outgunned, and now this? Terry's mind raced. They couldn't retreat. Earth would be defenseless. But a head-on fight was suicide. "All ships, form up into wolf pack squadrons," he ordered, a desperate plan forming. "We're going to buy the Krenim time." Hours later, Terry watched from the bridge of his command ship as the first wave of hit-and-run attacks struck the enemy fleet. Human and Krenim vessels darted in, unleashing devastating barrages before vanishing back into the void. The enemy, caught off guard, lashed out with world-shattering weapons that found only empty space. But the victories were Pyrrhic. With each engagement, more Allied ships winked out of existence, their crews making the ultimate sacrifice to slow the enemy's inexorable advance. Meanwhile, the remaining Earth and Krenim vessels formed a defensive perimeter around Charon, Pluto's largest moon. Terry paced the bridge of his flagship, now part of the makeshift fortress. "How much longer do the Krenim need?" he demanded. A Krenim scientist, her tentacles twitching with nervous energy, looked up from her console. "We're close, Admiral. The subspace vortex device is unlike anything we've ever built. If we can just... The ship rocked violently, claxons blaring. Enemy ships breaching the perimeter, someone shouted. Terry steadied himself against a bulkhead. All ships, engage. Protect that moon at all costs. The battle for Charon raged for weeks. The void around Pluto's moon became a graveyard of shattered hulls and frozen corpses. For every enemy vessel destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. Finally, inevitably, the defensive line crumbled. Enemy ships swarmed towards Charon, their weapons already charging for the killing blow. Terry's voice was calm as he gave the order. All remaining Earth vessels. Ramming speed. What followed was an inferno that rivaled the birth of stars. Human ships, their reactors set to overload, plowed into the enemy formation. The resulting detonations tore a hole in space itself, obliterating everything for thousands of kilometers. In the eerie calm that followed, Terry's crippled flagship limped towards the Krenim vessels regrouping behind Pluto. "Did we buy you enough time?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The Krenim scientist's eyes gleamed with a mix of terror and triumph. "It's ready, Admiral, but we only have 1 shot." Terry nodded grimly. "Then let's make it count." As if sensing the threat, the remaining enemy fleet intensified its assault. Energy beams lanced out, pummeling the few surviving ships. Terry's flagship shuddered as another hit tore through its hull. Warning lights bathed the bridge in an apocalyptic red glow. "Hold position!" Terry roared over the din of alarms. "Give the Krenim a clean shot!" He watched the main view screen, where a Krenim vessel was aligning a massive cannon unlike anything he'd ever seen. The enemy fleet loomed ever closer, their weapons building to a crescendo that would annihilate what remained of Earth's defenders. Terry's hands wrapped his hand around the chairs of his command chair. Everything, the fate of Earth, of the entire galaxy, hinged on what happened in the next few moments. "Krenim vessel," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "Fire when ready." The Krenim vessel unleashed its devastating weapon. A blinding torrent of energy erupted from the massive cannon, tearing through the void. Terry's eyes widened as he watched the beam streak across space, impacting the densest concentration of enemy ships. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Space itself seemed to warp and twist, the fabric of reality unraveling before their eyes. Enemy vessels caught in the blast simply ceased to exist, their molecular structures torn apart by forces beyond comprehension. "My God," Terry breathed, watching the sensor readings in disbelief. "It's working." But his elation was short-lived. As hundreds of hostile craft disintegrated, the sensors began blaring urgent warnings. The artificial singularities powering the weapon were destabilizing, spiraling rapidly out of control. "Krenim vessel, report!" Terry shouted into the comm. "What's happening?" The reply came back garbled, panic evident in the alien voice. "Cannot contain gravitational shear." Before Terry could process the implications, a massive distortion wave swept over the battlefield. His ship bucked violently, metal screaming as the hull began to twist and warp. Crew members were thrown from their stations, sparks showering from overloading consoles. Terry clung to his chair, watching in horror as the view screen showed the impossible becoming reality. Space itself seemed to fold and ripple, stars stretching into streaks of light. The enemy fleet, what remained of it, was being pulled into swirling vortexes of energy. "Full reverse thrust!" Terry bellowed, even as he realized the futility of the order. The ship's engines whined in protest, but they might as well have been trying to outrun a black hole. The bridge filled with the sounds of tearing metal and shattering glass. Terry felt a sickening lurch as the artificial gravity failed. He watched, helpless, as his crew were pulled towards the buckling hull, their screams cut short as they were sucked into the void. In his final moments, Terry's thoughts turned to Earth. He prayed that somehow, some way, their sacrifice would be enough to save humanity. As his ship imploded around him, Terry Harris closed his eyes and surrendered to the cosmic maelstrom. On Earth, scientists and military personnel stared at their screens in stunned silence. They watched as the subspace vortex expanded exponentially, consuming everything in its path. Ships, both friend and foe alike, vanished into the swirling maw of devastated spacetime. For agonizing minutes, they tracked the anomaly's growth. Then, as suddenly as it began, the energy dissipated. Where a furious battle had raged only moments before, there was now only an eerie, empty void. The silence in Earth's command centers was deafening. The weight of what they had witnessed, the loss of so many brave souls, the unleashing of a force they could barely comprehend, settled over them like a shroud.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.